Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. For this bonus episode, we're announcing our lineup for Season 7, Ghosts! On regular episodes of Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a film miniseries topic, we cover 6 films that fit a C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, and I'm sitting here in this haunted house where Brian and I are currently recording this episode. And if we stay the whole night, we get some sort of sum. I'm not sure what exactly. Maybe it was coupons even? I don't remember. But we're going to get some kind of reward for this.
Hi, I'm Brian, and I think they were like coupons to go like Winn-Dixie or something, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Gotta do all my shopping at Winn-Dixie. Because of Winn-Dixie. Everyone's favorite film from 2005 that everyone remembers. So, Brian, we're here for our bonus episode where we're going to be announcing our lineup for Season 7, which we should shout out was voted on by our patrons at patreon.com/cinema2letter. They ended up picking between 2 topics for our spooky, fall season, and they chose Ghosts, which we were very excited about because Ghosts, I feel like, gets taken for granted as a subgenre of horror. Feels like, a lot of people just don't appreciate the kind of like the real beauty and horror and fascination with, a spectral being there,
Yeah, they picked between this and Zombies, which Zombies was my pick. I'll just say,
right?
It's
I
okay
Ghosts.
that you didn't. Yeah, and it's okay. I understand. I do think though that there's of course a lot more variety. I think with ghosts and ghost stories than Zombies necessarily. I think that would be it would be fun, but I think it would be a bit samey necessarily. I think there's a lot more variety, a lot more things you can kind of do with the idea of ghosts, and yeah, it'll be a fun season, I think.
It'll be interesting, especially considering, admittingly, a lot of our movies for this season do kind of have a sort of, haunted house vibe, because that is definitely a lot of where ghosts come from, though
Sure.
I'll just say a guest in the near future might admit that a ghost movie and haunted house movie don't always intertwine. A ghost movie doesn't have to be a haunted house movie. But at the same time, haunted house is like a fairly prolific genre for the ghost subgenre, as it were.
Right, yeah.
But you know what? Let's go ahead and let's announce it, Brian. Let's go down the line and announce each of our episodes for the spooky season. So first, our C for Classic, House on Haunted Hill, the original 1959 film, which will be coming out on September 24th. And, we'll just shout out. We just recorded that episode shortly before we recorded this. If everything goes right, we'll be having that out with our great returning guest, Lily Labens, who's always fun to have on the show. We had a fun time recording that one. And, this is a spooky one that, Brian, you hadn't seen, along with, we should mention, all the picks for this season. You have not seen before we decided to do them.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the movies we picked, which was not really, like, intentional or anything. It wasn't like we were trying to pick ones that specifically that I hadn't seen or anything. It just kind of ended up that way, but I think it's kind of fun, and especially with something like House on Haunted Hill, which we again recorded today. I watched it today, and I was really like pleasantly surprised by that movie. It is always kind of tricky when I haven't seen any of the movies. I think it gets a bit tricky with kind of what am I expecting, and then having to kind of talk about it and stuff like that, but it is very fun still to be kind of presented with new movies in this kind of subgenre, especially.
Sometimes I feel like the show becomes like a let me show you something, Brian. It's like me putting a recommendation here because I've seen all these movies before, but at the same time I do feel like we have a bit of variety here because I'll just go right down the line. After that, the next week, our Eye for Indie, is for Insidious from 2010, the James Wan film. That'll be coming out on October 1st, kicking off the month of spookiness right there with Insidious, which I've seen all the Insidious movies. I think it's very interesting, especially as we'll, I'm sure, talk about in that episode. A huge critical point in modern horror, I would argue, is Insidious, because I think that begets a lot of like what we have had ever since then in the horror sphere.
Yeah, and I think it's it's an interesting one as well, where I haven't seen Insidious, but I have seen most other James Wan movies, and I'm a really big James Wan fan. I love everything he does, like especially as of late. Well, most things he's done, but yeah, I'm just a big fan of him, and so getting to finally watch this movie, which, as you said, it was like it is a very, very, very important moment for modern horror. Is it'll be interesting.
Yes. Then our next episode, and for new, we'll be talking about The Night House from 2021. That'll come out on October 8th. That particular episode. Yeah, I'm very curious to talk about this. We've talked, we love Rebecca Hall. We're big fans, but this is kind of the ones, yeah, that like I remember hearing a lot about, and I did see it, and I'm curious to talk about, especially not just her, but David Bruckner, and even kind of like the modern horror thing, because Insidious is on one end of things, and then The Night House definitely, owes a bit more to the kind of modern. I don't want to say just trauma horror thing. That's part of it. But
Sure,
at the same time, I think it has some interesting different ideas on that. I know you also haven't seen this one, but yeah, you like Hall. You're down for Hall. You're a hollerer.
Yeah, I'm walking down that hall. I do. I love Rebecca Hall. I think she's great. Even great in stuff that is like, no offense or anything, but kind of beneath her in a way, like the MonsterVerse stuff.
What?
But. But
she gets to do so much smiling and pointing and expositing sci-fi gobbledygook, Brian.
She has an adopted daughter. That's, come on, yeah. But yeah, it was I feel like this was a big kind of like among us like film fans, like, oh, have you seen The Night House? It's a really great like horror movie, like, kind of great from Rebecca Hall, and just kind of like also it being like a Fox movie, right? Like it gets us into kind of,
that's true.
Not just like the modern.
That's one of like the 20th Century Studios kind of releases. Yeah, I think that's why it kind of got bungled in its release.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but it'll be interesting to kind of talk about like the modern studio horror movie, right? Like kind of and get into more of that. So yeah, very excited for that one.
Yes. Then our E for egregious for this season. We're going with something a bit different, and then there's ghosts and horror aesthetics to it, but this is more in the family film vein. We'll be talking about Casper from 1995. That episode will come out on October 15th. And I'm very curious about this one. Remember, I saw in childhood, didn't see for a while until like one Halloween in high school. And I was like, oh, this isn't as good as I remember it being. And I haven't seen it since then. But yeah, I'll be curious. This is one definitely I own like the clamshell VHS for and all this other stuff. One I might have memorized, honestly, just because I saw it so fucking much as a kid. But yeah, Brian hasn't seen this one either, so I'm very curious to see what you think of this thing that only '90s kids would understand.
Hey,
Brian.
First off, I am a '90s kid. I was born in 1998.
I mean, we're both technically '90s kids in that we were both children in the '90s, but
Right.
To some extent. But yeah, it'll be interesting to go into that one. Do you have any expectations for that? I don't know what your barometer for Casper is.
It's he's one of those things I know from just cultural osmosis and like being a kid, right? You learn about like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I know that Christina Ricci is in this film.
Yep.
That's it.
Bill Pullman's also in it. Eric
Okay.
Idle's also in it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely curious, and it feels like one of those like very quintessential 90s films. Like it kind of represents a lot of the sensibilities of the 90s, at least from what I know.
I don't know about quintessential, but it's very much a product of that time.
Yeah. That's more what I mean. But yeah, I'm very curious to watch Casper finally.
Well, I got to talk about our M for Masterpiece, which will be The Others from 2001. That'll come out on October 22nd. And this was the one, because like behind the curtain, when we were planning the season, Brian and I each had like a bunch of different choices for classic, indie, new, egregious, and atypical. But I was very insistent to Brian that like need to talk about the others because this is not just one of my favorite ghost movies, but truly one of my favorite films of all time. Not to put it on any kind of pedestal before you see it for the first time, Brian.
It's one of those movies I've heard about, and I'd heard that kind of reputation that it is like one of the great 21st century horror movies. I love Nicole Kidman. I love her weird career. She has just such a fascinating, strange career, especially around this time.
Yeah.
Which I think is around the time she's doing like, of course, like Eyes Wide Shut, but she's doing like Birth and stuff like that, which is just so.
A credit you'll see in for the others is produced by Tom Cruise.
Oh wow!
Because this was the last thing they collaborated on before their divorce.
Oh, very interesting. Okay,
Deeply
yeah,
interesting.
but
Yeah. We're recording this, unfortunately, on a very bad day for her, where her mom just recently died suddenly.
Oh no!
Oh, were you not aware of that?
No.
No,
so
yeah,
sad.
she it was a weird thing where she won at Venice. She won Best Actress, and then like she said, I can't accept it because of family tragedy. Very unfortunate. Our hearts go out to Nicole.
Absolutely, yeah.
And her family for sure. Yeah, on that. But in any case, we'll be talking a lot more about Nicole in the others episode, which is I think it's a phenomenal performance from her. Definitely just a lot to talk about there. And then Brian, we end our seasons on an A for atypical choice. And I think we're going to be stretching the limits of atypical within the word cinema. Because for our A for atypical choice, which will come out on October 29th, we'll be talking about Ghost Watch, which is a television special that aired in 1992. What? Did not air on film screens, but Brian and I talked this over a lot. And we decided, you know what? For atypical, we can stretch things a lot. I just really wanted to talk about this because it's truly, I think, one of... We talked about like time capsule thing earlier. Such a fascinating, specific, weird thing that happened. A true like cultural event in Britain that is like so phenomenal that at the same time works, even if I, as someone who like is so far removed, did not watch this when it aired, watched it so many years later, I get it because it seems fucking terrifying. Especially if I thought this shit was real, I would be mortified, especially if I was, say, a child who watched this. But, Brian, you are only aware of this for your reputation as well. You don't know much about this one.
No, not really. Just what we have talked about, and I've read a little bit of, like, the Wikipedia page from it. Yeah, very, very curious to watch this, especially with how you've described it. It sounds very fascinating. I kind of like it as you know, we made the rules, so we should be able to break them as well.
Right.
You know, why not?
Rules are meant to be broken. We're rebels and renegades from ourselves.
Right.
You understand me.
Yeah, but I'm very curious to see this, especially, yeah, knowing a lot of the kind of real life stuff about it is very interesting. So, yeah, it'll be a really fun and interesting way to end the season.
Yes. So I'll just run down one more time the whole season lineup. On September 24th, C for Classic, House on Haunted Hill 1959. On October 1st, our I for Indie episode on Insidious from 2010. On October 8th, our N for New choice, The Night House from 2021. On October 15th, our E for Egregious choice, Casper from 1995. On October 22nd, we'll be talking about our M for Masterpiece, The Others from 2001. And finally, on October 29th, our A for Atypical choice, Ghost Watch from 1992. Now, on that note, we should at least tease that while we'll be doing stuff on the main feed, Brian, we also have a lot of stuff we'll be talking about on the Patreon. Things are going to get spooky over there as well, as we'll have some audio reviews for very haunted, unsettling, disturbing films that are coming out in theaters now, like Beetlejuice, that review would have already come up. Or Megalopolis, so spooky for some checks that might bounce. And, of course, Joker Folie à they're gonna sing.
Oh, spooky.
Though it isn't a musical, as we all know, from Lady Gaga.
Well, while you mentioned Venice, I am a little upset that Joker did not win the Golden Lion again. I mean...
What?
Come on.
Can't believe it. after all those glowing reviews that just came out. I don't know. We're still covering that movie because there is so much to talk about with that fucking movie. I am
it looks fascinating.
genuinely fascinated with the fact that it's happening, and what it means and how it's gonna do. There's so much into that, but yeah. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that'll be coming out. I'm sure we'll also be having some other things like our big retrospective on space, which will come out in September. That's our big bonus podcast. The Edgar Wright series from the late 90s, early 2000s, celebrating its 25th anniversary, given it premiered in 1999. We'll be talking about that. I'm gonna assume some of the other Edgar Wright stuff, right?
Yeah, man. I'm very curious to revisit some of Edgar Wright's movies because I haven't seen them since I was in high school. I'm very curious to see how they have aged, with me in particular.
And plus seeing where it all originated from.
That's true.
The TV show, yeah. But we should also tease that in terms of film, in October, our big bonus podcast is going to be a Nightmare on Elm Street full franchise, everybody. That's right. We're going through all 9 of those movies. We're going through the original Nightmare on Elm Street celebrating its 40th anniversary this Halloween season. That's where we decided to do it. But we'll also be doing a Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. We'll be doing Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. We'll be doing Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. We'll be doing... Oh. I don't know if you heard that, but it thunderclapped over here while I was doing that. Spooky.
Freddy's out there.
Freddy's controlling the weather now. Oh, no. I'm in a podcast. Of course I'm in a nightmare. But in any case, we'll be talking about all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. That's the point. We'll be talking about all of them. And I'll be very curious, Brian, for you, especially because you've seen 3 of them. You've seen the original, you've seen New Nightmare, and you've seen Freddy vs. Jason, because we did Friday the 13th on our Patreon.
Freddy vs. Jason.
Yep, look, you don't have to rewatch it. You don't have to rewatch it if you don't want to.
No, yeah, but a kind of a weird franchise where, I've jumped around a bit. Yeah, because, New Nightmare is in a weird place, I think, in that franchise. But I've never seen any of the sequels, so I'm very curious to do that, especially because last year we did that Friday the 13th one, and as crazy as we got by the end of that, I still really enjoyed watching all those movies and going through, one of the most iconic franchises in all of horror. So to do that with another one of them will be kind of fun, and it's not 12 movies, right? The last one was 12 movies, pretty much.
Yep.
So.
This one's 9 because
slightly more manageable.
Yep. And we're including the remake. That'll be where we end. I can't wait to end on that remake. Such a good remake. Especially after we liked the Friday the 13th remake, so that means that one's gonna be good too, right? Right.
You have assured me it's not.
No, I have. This is all jest, shockingly. But yeah, also I'll just shout, we'll have some other, I'm sure, bonus treats and goodies to put in your trick-or-treat bags when you come by for the Patreon, because I'll be doing, I'll be dropping some Dragon Con panels that I recorded. There's a couple on there, I still need to listen back. I don't know if I'll post all of them, but there's one on Ed Wood, there's one on the Gothic 90s horror. There's a bunch of other things that I'll put out there, and I'm sure other Brian and I have talked about maybe doing some other bonus goodies in addition to the audio reviews and whatnot to because it's the spooky season. We gotta give them a bit of an extra treat, a little bite-sized candy,
a little one of those bite-sized Snickers or Milky Way. I'm trying to think of other bite-sized candies.
Three Musketeers,
Malamars,
Zag Nuts.
Zag Nuts. Oh, wow. There's little Tootsie Rolls, stuff like that.
Yes, for sure. That'll be over on the Patreon for just the $1. It really helps out the show. Allows us to keep the main feed going, and also allows us to experiment and do fun things over there for you patron cineasts, as we call you. Really appreciate you out there. But on that note, we'll just wrap up here. We want to thank some people like Burial Grid for our intro music used for the show. For all the music used on the show, purchases music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Find her at MishKyle96 over on Twitter. And for whatever, reason, if you are on a hell site social media thing, the true spookiest place to be this day and age. Whatever hell site you're on, we're probably at cinema number 2 letter on there, if we are on there. And you can find me over mostly on Letterboxd at this point. This is at Not The Who's Tommy. And I also occasionally do writing at film-cred.com. And I'll just shout out over on the Talk Film Society feed. You can listen to myself do an audio commentary with Marcelo Pico and Siobhan Irving, friends of the show who have guested previously, where we do an audio commentary. They've been doing all the Friday the 13th movies over there on that feed, and you can listen to my commentary I recorded with them for Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. A very controversial one that not a lot of people like, but I kind of defend, and even over the course of that very flawed movie, still defend to a certain degree.
Yes, and you can follow me on Twitter. I'm sometimes there. I don't know.
He lurks like a ghost in the background.
Sometimes it calls to me, the Twitter on my phone.
Listen to it, children of
But yeah, that's you can follow me on there at BRYANDRADE and the number 3, or you can follow me on Letterboxd, where I actually do use that website more. So yeah, you can follow me on either of those.
Yes, and for more of us, subscribe to us over on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, why not listen to all the other great shows that are on the network and that commentary and all the other Friday the 13th commentaries that are going on over there with Marcel and Siobhan. And you can dig into the archives in our Podbean main feed for, all the previous seasons we've done of this show, as well as the old Double Edge, Double Bill stuff, all there for you to listen to. The free way to help us out, if you can't support us on the Patreon, that's cool. Money can be tight for some people, but for free, you can rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility. It really helps out, especially when we're just stuck in this haunted house. But, Brian, we're near the end of our shift, so I think we're gonna, probably wrap up here, say that, stay tuned for House on Haunted Hill next week, and, Brian, did you hear that noise? Over there in the corner? Is there some kind of spooky, ghostly noise? I'm not sure what it could be. Let me just open this door. Brian, I have to open the door!